name is Mrs. Micklon, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my self-portrait. This is a portrait that I did my first year of college, towards the end of my first drawing class. This self-portrait is done in charcoal. One of the techniques that I used was that I toned the whole paper with a Vine charcoal before I then went in and started to use a kneaded eraser in order to lift or pull out the lighter areas, and I used a compressed charcoal in order to darken some of the darker areas. I found it really beneficial to be able to work both lightening and darkening my charcoal. I didn't feel as restricted building only the darks. Some elements and principles that I used value in order to help show form, and that's why this looks very three-dimensional, because I was really conscious of using a strong variety of values, and including things like the cast shadow across my body, the highlights on the right side of my face, and shadows on the opposite side to help create the illusion of being three-dimensional. I also was thinking about focusing on the principle of balance. The reason that this artwork feels balanced is because the head is kind of off to the one side, and then the hand, which is very large because of the foreshortening that's going on, balances the head on the opposite side. I also thought about my background and how I wanted to show that there was something in the background, that it is not a very deep space, it's actually a very shallow space, and so that there was kind of a wall with something hanging on it behind me. Some goals and intentions that I had were I wanted to correctly show the foreshortening that's happening here. Because my arm is coming straight out, my arm feels very short and my hand feels very large in order to show that my arm was straight out in front of me. I also made a lot of comparisons when I was creating this. I did a lot of visual measuring to make sure that my facial proportions were in the correct place and that my hand felt proportional to my face. And that was what I was really thinking about and concentrating on while I was working on it, was accurate proportions and making comparisons between different things. So when I was doing it, I made sure that the top of my fingertips lined up with above my eyebrows, and the bottom of my hand was about at the base of my neck, and those kinds of comparisons in order to get my proportions accurate. I composed the work this way because everything fits well into the frame. I didn't want my hand cut off or my face cut off at all. I wanted it to feel as though it was very neatly fit into the frame, and I also wanted to make sure that it felt like a very balanced composition. I learned a lot about showing light and dark in order to show form. I also learned a little bit about how I could correctly show hair, about adding in the values first and then going in and adding the texture in order to make it feel like lifelike hair. I think one change that I would make would be that I would make the eyes smaller. Overall, I was really happy with this piece. I think it was pretty successful. At the time, I do think it was an accurate depiction of what I looked like. And I think I'll carry this into the future. By now I have a really good understanding of facial proportions, how the facial features connect to each other, and I think one goal that I have for the future is to try and do some kind of a self-portrait drawing, at least every year, so that I can kind of show visually my growth physically, but also the development of my artistic skills. Thanks.